Chapter 8. Destiny. Jefferson Crape didn't like the winter much. He still had to drive Esmeralda back and forth through the valley, but it wasn't as interesting. There were never as many animals to target. The meadow seemed to grind to a halt, and he had to drive a little slower to avoid the lorries sliding on the frozen roads. While he might average 10 penknife notches a week during high summer, he was lucky to get one a week. Maybe a squirrel forced out through hunger once the snow came. Today he was loading up Esmeralda with logs for a trip from Pearlbury to the coast, where they would be loaded onto a cargo ship. It was a favour for a friend of his father's who was a timber merchant. Who cared? It was work. Meat or wood, it made no difference. The drive to the coast still took him through Merlin's meadow, and there was always a chance to have some fun, even if it had been in short supply lately. Snowdrop didn't know how long he'd slept, but when he woke, Godric was waiting, perched on a low branch dusted with snow, with his head tucked behind a wing to protect himself from the wind.
"You are troubled,"
said the wind-seeker softly.
"This is a long way from your home."
Snowdrop tried to gather his thoughts, but they were just as jumbled and confusing as the snowflakes that were falling. "I need to fly again," he found himself saying.
"Why?"
replied Godric.
"What would be achieved? You are a Spikeshuffler, and Spikeshufflers don't fly."
"I don't know. I just know that I must," Snowdrop whispered. Godric asked no more questions. He fluttered down from his branch and lightly picked up the little Spikeshuffler in talons that could easily have torn him apart. In an instant, they were skimming the hedgerows and skirting the trees on an ascent of discovery. Soon there was nothing, just a heavy grey sky, so different from the brilliant blue which had greeted Snowdrop's maiden flight. Snow swirled all around him in mesmerising patterns. "Higher, higher!" shouted Snowdrop. "I must go higher!" Something inside him, deep within his soul, was urging him on. Godric responded by arching his wings to gather more air and flying upwards, and then the wind found a voice.
"The answer is there, at the top of a mountain."
It was almost as if Godric had heard the voice too, because he was circling Nab Top and came into land on a snowy crag of rock which jutted out at right angles from the peak. "This is it. You must leave me here," said Snowdrop. "But you will perish," replied Godric. "If I am to die, then this is the place for it, high in the sky, up among the clouds and the wind," Snowdrop sighed. He looked up at his saviour of more than once. "Friends?" he asked. The old wind-seeker looked down at Snowdrop, and seconds passed in silence.
"Friends."
Godric had vanished in two heavy, sombre beats of his wings, and Snowdrop was alone, wondering what he, a mere Spikeshuffler, was doing at the top of a mountain in the middle of a blizzard. He knew he could not survive for long, and he could already feel an aching numbness creeping up his legs and into his freezing body. Through the snowflakes the sky was the colour of a shoal of grey flappers, and the wind was as loud as the flyman's mighty engine up close. Snowdrop stood there, hypnotised by the ever-changing white dotted patterns against the dark sky, and he felt a powerful urge to sleep. Once he was asleep, the pain would be gone, and he would never wake up. He would be with his father again. His father. The thought jolted him back to consciousness, and the snowflakes began to swirl into circles, scurrying, flurrying, hurrying like a million dandelion heads trapped in a whirlwind. When the swirling stopped, Snowdrop could make out a shape, just as his mother had taught him to see animals mapped out in the stars. It was a face, a strong, reassuring face, the face of his father. Snowdrop was too cold to say a word, but the voice of his father could be heard echoing on the wind.
"The time is now, my special son. It is time to fly, Time to fly! Time to fly!
The swirling began again, and the face was gone. Snowdrop knew there was not a second left. He drew on what remained of his strength, forced himself to the very edge of the outcrop of rock, closed his eyes, and jumped.